Here's your host, Jason Voorhees and Aaron Savage.
Oh, yeah!
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Sports and Metal Podcast. As always, we are your hosts. This is Aaron Savage. With me, as always, my partner in crime, Mr. Jason Voorhees. We have a very special show tonight, a very special guest. But before we get started, I want to give a shout out to our sponsors. First and foremost, our oldest sponsor, La Terrain Watches. Make sure you visit their website, www.laterrain.com. That's www.la-touraine.com. You're going to want to use our promo code SNM. That's the letters SNM as in sports and metal. And you're going to save 10% off your purchase at checkout. Make sure you tell them Sports and Metal sent you. And not to be remiss and forget our other sponsor, BetUS. I know football season is over, but we still have other sports going on. MLB's spring training's here. So make sure you visit their site. Use our affiliate link. You can see it right below me here, bit.ly/sports and metal. You're going to get 125% bonus on your first $100 deposit. So that being said, without further ado, how are you, Jay?
Doing great, man.
Awesome. I'm really excited for tonight's show.
We spoke right on cue there. I've been wanting to get these guys on for a long time, and we're blessed to have Jim with us tonight, and super excited to do this interview and get his perspective on the band and what's going on in the world of metal.
Yeah, before we bring him out, let me give everybody a little bit of a background. Jim Louvau is the front man of the industrial metal band There Is No Us. They're described as a hypercharged hybrid of hypnotic metal and gnashing industrial. They immediately make their intentions clear. As Jim says, our goal is to stomp your face in. Pummeling riffs, menacing electronics, venomous lyrical vitriol, and a dystopic vision. This Phoenix, Arizona quartet will kick your ass. Without further ado, let's bring him out, Mr. Jim Louvau.
Where am I? There we are.
There you are. How are you, Jim?
Good. How are you?
Good. We're happy to have you on the show, man.
Yeah, I'm stoked to be here.
Yeah, I don't know where to start because you're kind of like a jack of all trades. I mean, your photography is, you've worked with everybody in metal. So I don't know where you want to start. You have the new single coming out with your project, There Is No Us, Fame Whore, the new album. Why don't we start there? You guys have released 2 EPs, one in 2015, one in 2018. What should the fans expect? Is this going to be another EP? Is this going to be a full-length album? What's going on?
I believe that technically it's going to be a full record. I think that we've been swayed into putting a full – when you say EP, an EP can technically be like 4 songs. Sure. But you can put a record out that has like 8 or 9 songs. And we have no shortage of songs. So it was really like when we finished recording these initial batch of songs and had them mixed and mastered, we kind of didn't stop writing. And, it's just like when you're feeling good about writing, you want to do as much of it as possible. And Andy, our guitar player, he can write songs in his sleep. So when he's feeling up to it, he can bust out some songs pretty quickly, and we work very quickly as a band too.
Cool. Now you and Andy are longtime friends, going back to childhood. Am I correct?
Yes, me, Jared, our other guitar player, and Andy and I have been friends since we were in high school. So it's pretty wild that we've been in bands together off and on for the past 25 years or something. So it's cool that we're still playing music together, and these guys are all my best friends. So we pretty much have a good idea what you're going to get from the other one.
That's awesome. Why don't you give us a little bit of a background? How did the band come to be?
Well, I think initially I was working with another band that was basically at the end of its road, and a lot of the stuff I was doing in that band at the time wasn't necessarily anything close to as heavy as what we do in There Is No Us. but I had started doing some screaming and sent Andy a couple songs, and he was like, "Hey man, like you want to do something heavy?" And I said, "Sure, let's get together, just have fun." Like there was no real intention in starting a band. It was just more like a couple of friends, you know, getting together and seeing what happens. And that's always the best way to really go about much of anything artistic related. From what I find, like it kind of takes a lot of the pressure away, and you know, it's just when you've been working together at any capacity, you know somebody really well for that long, it makes it really easy and exciting to go down new avenues together. And that's exactly how There Is No Us started, was, you know, just, hey, let's get in a room and make the heaviest music we've ever made before and see what happens.
That's also,
Yeah.
now you guys are hugely influenced by bands like Nine Inch Nails, Ministry. Tell us a little about your influences.
I mean, Nine Inch Nails is, you know, by far our biggest influence. You know, Ministry, old school Marilyn Manson, and just 16 Volt, and like some of the more obscure, you know, industrial bands that were around when we first started, and bands that were doing, you know, electronically heavy music way before we even knew how to do it. But that was something that was exciting and new to us, because we all pretty much came from like Guns N' Roses and Metallica. Like those were the bands we grew up with. And you know, you got tons of guitar solos and a lot of these epic, crazy songs. So throwing something like Nine Inch Nails into the mix, where there is keyboards and distorted, you know, vocals and just chaos, that was something that really struck a chord with all of us.
Sure.
And really had a crazy impact, specifically probably on Andy and I the most. We loved the you know, that all the stuff that happened between like 1990, probably 1990 to probably 1996 was very important for us, as we were kind of digging our toes into this music that was new to us.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So obviously, you know, you're talking about your influences. You know, obviously Nine Inch Nails, Marilyn Manson. Correct me if I'm wrong. Your guitarist, he played for Marilyn Manson, right?
Andy,
Yeah,
right?
Andy played bass for the High End of Low tour, which, goodness, I can't believe it's been more than 10 years now. But yeah, that was a pretty wild thing too, growing up with that music, and then being in that band for, you know, the 8 or 10 months that he was touring with them. And I remember seeing him on stage for the first time, and I was like shooting the show, and us kind of looking down at each other, laughing like, how did this happen? Like,
Is
this
this
is
real
so,
life?
yeah, it's bizarre.
I mean, I would be awestruck, because like obviously it's like that's your influence, and there you are, like both, you know, you're shooting it and he's playing in it. Now,
And that's a really cool thing to get to do from both perspectives too. You know, for us to, like, if I wasn't a photographer, like I would have just been someone in the crowd, kind of, you know, cheering him on. But the fact that we got to do that together and have that experience was really cool.
Yeah, I find it amazing, and I want to get into your photography a lot.
Cool.
Before I do, though, let's give credit where it's due. You also had a cool experience. I don't know if it's still active, but you have a side project with Richard Patrick, if I'm correct.
Yes, in fact, that record hasn't come out yet, and it's also
Okay.
done. So I can't talk too much about it at the moment. We can definitely come back to the show when stuff starts happening
Sure.
with it. But it is done and it is coming out. There'll be songs that are coming out this year. I don't know if the full EP or whatever that is going to turn into is coming out this year, but there are songs that will be released in the coming months, and probably some shows. And right now, that's about all I know with that project. And I'm so in There Is No Us mode right now that it's going to be cool to go from one thing to the other, though. Like,
Yeah, you're a busy man, and just so the fans know, the project is called A Place to Kill.
yes,
Yeah.
Place to
So
Kill.
yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
So your beginnings with There Is No Us, like obviously I told you, before we even came on that obviously I got hooked on that very first album, Farewell to Humanity. One of the like cool things that I realized about that album is the lyrics are super deep. The message that you guys are trying to get across, like the topics that that the songs kind of bring out are just all real world issues. And, you guys use a lot of voiceovers and kind of spoken word imagery in your music. You guys do a phenomenal job at like mixing that. Like, how did you guys like kind of come up with that concept? And be like, it's just amazing that I can see like a lot of these lyrics, like it's just like deep. Like, obviously, I don't know if it's like personal stuff that you've dealt with, you and the band members, but like, it's just an amazing. Like when I listen to that record, it's just every single song hits me like really deep.
Well, the dialogue samples are what you're kind of referring to,
Yeah.
and so being from Phoenix and growing up, like around the time we were all in high school, there was a local band in Phoenix called N17 who were also very heavily influenced by like Ministry and Skinny Puppy and sort of that electronic element of rock and industrial. And they used a lot of really cool and samples, but they were placing them in really, I don't know, like really great places in the songs. So instead of it being a distraction, those dialogue samples and those noises became very important to the song and the structure and the messaging. And Ministry is probably best known, I would say, for the dialogue samples. Like if you go listen to like Psalm 69 or any of that older stuff, like they really use those effectively to get the messages across in the songs. And in the beginning, that was something that we were trying to do the same sort of thing. And I think over time we have taken them out a little bit just because like we're always trying to evolve the band and the sound too. We still do have dialogue samples and some of the new stuff too, but that was something in the beginning that we were taking from bands like N17 and Ministry for sure.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where Jay's point was headed. It's not just the use of the samples, it's how they're implemented into the track. It's seamless. It becomes part of the journey that you take when listening to the album. Each song is like a chapter.
Yeah, and Jason, to sort of talk about the lyrical content, like when we first started the band, like the world wasn't quite as terrible as it's become, but it's almost like we saw it coming.
Yeah.
And it was really crazy to put these songs together and then see basically like what felt like the collapse of mankind and humanity. It's just been a bizarre, few years, but yeah, we were on that tip before it quite, went in that direction. So yeah, it's wild.
Yeah, I mean, it's really your music is literally like a soundtrack to the last 6-7 years. Literally.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is like I feel like like people are so beaten down by politics and choosing sides and really feeling like they're pitted against each other based on like their beliefs or like their lifestyle or whatever. It was really wild to sort of see how things played out, and it's so easy to take influence and be inspired by all of this really negative sort of just vibes that the world's had for quite a while.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, before we get into anything else, I want to ask while we're on the subject, for anyone that might not be familiar with your music, how would you've heard us describe the music? How would you describe it? Like if you wanted to describe it to somebody that hasn't heard it, what would they expect?
I would say that it's very in your face, aggressive, but yet memorable. And I don't think that your mom would like it, but
And that's great, right?
yeah, but if you're a 15-year-old pissed off young man or young lady who's looking for sort of an outlet to to feel like you belong to something that isn't maybe what your classmates are into, or like the other kids. Like, this music is for people who are outcasts as well. And I think that really, like, having messages and really making things feel like we're all in this kind of giant. Am I allowed to curse on this thing?
Of course you can.
Okay. We're in the shit together, and we're just the mouthpiece for it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now I have to ask. You guys grew up in the Phoenix area, right?
Mhm.
I have to ask. Have you
Alrighty.
ever just in the neighborhood just bumped into Rob Halford?
No, it's funny. Rob Halford is someone who I might be doing something with in the next few months, but he is one of the last of the Phoenix guys that I either don't know or haven't worked with yet. So it's coming from what I'm being told. There's something coming down the pipeline.
Awesome, awesome. And on that note, let's get into that a little bit. You've worked um in the photography end of the business and in the production end of the business with everybody who's who of musicians in the rock and metal world. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that? Were when did this when was photography prior to music? What came first, the photography or the music?
So
And
they
what's
kind of
the true love? Or is it both?
well, they to me they go hand in hand.
Sure.
When I was little, it'd be like having to go to the grocery store with like your parents or your grandparents, and that was a pretty miserable experience for most kids who are. I got started pretty early. It was like I'm 5 years old, and when I went to the store, I was like, I'll go and I'll be good if you let me have a rock magazine, and I'll just
I,
go to
I
the
was just, I
magazine.
don't want to cut you off, but I have to just really quick. I was literally going to say, I used to love going to the store with my mom for two reasons. One is I would just disappear into the magazine aisle and I would read like Metal Edge.
Yep.
I'm like late 80s, early 90s was when I was really molded by my music. It was like Metal Edge, Hit Parader, Circus.
Oh yeah, those were all the ones that
Yeah.
we're talking about.
And then
That's
like a hot dog from the hot dog cart on the way out.
yeah.
So I can
As
relate to that experience. Yep.
as long as I could get a copy of Hit Parader or Metal Edge,
Yep.
um,
I
or
was
Rick,
good.
I was good.
I'd
So
stand in that aisle the whole time.
yeah, so like they would go shopping. It could be like 45 minutes, and I'm just going through every magazine and
Yep.
then deciding which one I wanted, and then you know seeing the photos in the magazines. I always thought like, wow, like what a cool thing for the photographers to. And at that time I assumed that everybody who was working with these bands kind of became friends with them, because when you're 5 or 10, you don't know that sometimes this is sometimes this is a 5-minute photo shoot,
Sure, sure.
and it's hard to make friends in 5 minutes. So I would I was surrounded by music my whole life, basically. Like my mother was very young when she had me, and I think that music was like an escape for all of us, because that was something that everyone enjoyed, and essentially it was either cheap or free to listen to the radio. And I saw an opportunity as a young person to be involved, or wanting to be involved, in as many facets of rock and metal as I could. So that's kind of how it started. And over time, I was in high school. I had to take an elective. I had taken all the other ones. I took I took PE or gym class like every single semester. And at some point, they're like, you got to do something different. So I took a photography class, and that was really the only one that I had taken. And
Interesting.
I didn't even have a camera. I borrowed one from a buddy. It was like someone's grandma's camera, and it was set up well enough that I could capture. And when I was talking about that band In17 that we grew up on in Phoenix, I started going to their shows with my camera and shooting their shows and using those photos as my class assignments.
That's awesome. So how did it become a full-time career? Like how did it get to that point?
I just didn't stop, and I don't really take no for an answer very well. I'm very persistent, and uh, the quick end of this story is I actually got a job working at the newspaper, like selling newspaper subscriptions.
Okay.
So after about a year and a half of doing that, like I would get on the company intranet and you could find out like who does what and what department, is on what floor and that sort of thing. So I asked my boss at the time, like, who's the photo editor? And they're like, well, you just go on this thing and you can find out. So I just sent the guy a message and I was like, hey, I work on the 5th floor. Like, can I just come by and show you my stuff? And I blew me off like 3 times, and eventually realized I wasn't gonna take no. And so he met up with me and he was like, look, he goes, and this was quite a while ago. So things have only gotten worse, is what I'm getting at. But it used to be like if there was a photographer that either retired or died, they didn't replace them because the print media world was so sparse at that point, and it was everything was headed to online.
Sure.
And so he was like, look, he goes, I can't really do anything for you. He's like, if there is a time where we need somebody to shoot a concert and we don't have anybody, like, we might reach out. So eventually they did. And I shot an Aerosmith and Motley Crue show in like
Wow.
2007 or something. And that was like my first real assignment. And then it went from like 1 a week to 2 a week to, at one point, I was shooting 4 or 5 days a week. And sort of really trying to figure out how to use my camera. Digital was still fairly new, and the technology with the cameras, it wasn't anything like it is now. Like it's come so far, but in the beginning, like you had to really find ways of using your gear and like pushing it as far as you can to to get good images. And like since I didn't work for the newspaper in that capacity, like I had my little Canon Rebel and a 50 millimeter lens that was like $100. So I started with what everyone really should start with, especially for like the music stuff. Is it's not always about the gear. The gear definitely helps, but they just kept giving me more work, and then I started freelancing for them and another publication in Phoenix, and it just kind of grew. And then I started getting hired, from other bands and labels and management, and I haven't stopped.
That's amazing. That's such a grassroots story. And it's awesome in an era and in an age where like everybody becomes internet famous for no reason. It's very refreshing to hear a story of somebody that like literally like it's almost like a throwback to the Sunset Strip bands putting posters on all the poles.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Like you put yourself out there until somebody said, "Hey, okay, I'll give you a shot."
the cockroach wins, man.
Yeah,
That's nice. If you
Yeah.
want to do if you want to do anything, like just keep doing it.
yeah, yeah,
It's almost impossible to get worse at it unless it's just not for you.
That's one. Yeah, that's true, right? Practice makes perfect. I hope we could try, right?
Something.
No, I think it's a great story. Obviously, you have a lot. You have your hands in a lot of things. You're in numerous bands. You're obviously in the photography. Going back to the music side of things, I'm curious. Like, obviously, you talked about your influences as far as bands, but like, who would you say like is your idol as far as vocal, being a singer? Who would you say you model yourself after? Because you do have that great, screaming vocals, and obviously that's the kind of music that I'm attracted to. So
I don't know if I necessarily have like one specific person that vocally I am similar to. I think that there's a few different elements of music I grew up with that you can hear. But that's kind of for you guys to tell me. Like, people's opinions are really none of my business in a lot of ways. It's if you ask me who my favorite singer of all time is, I would tell you Mike Patton from Faith No More and Mr. Bungle.
Jay and I are huge Mike Patton fans.
Right. But as a singer, you never compare yourself to Mike Patton. He's the GOAT, man. You can't even say stuff like that out loud. And I don't like there's some stuff that he does that I try to do things that are similar here and there, but I'm not the same type of singer he is. So I don't know. You guys tell me who you think it sounds like.
If
That's
I had
probably
to pick, when Manson does the scream, I
yeah.
see some of that in there.
Yeah.
Well, I should say I hear it. I hear a little bit of like what is it, Matt Tuck from Bullet for My Valentine?
Really?
I hear a little of that.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's somewhere in there to me. Like, what do you think, Jay?
Yeah, I was gonna say Marilyn Manson.
Yeah, I definitely hear that when
Honestly,
Manson goes full on with the scream. I
Yeah.
definitely hear that, and
like
and it probably with the industrial background, it adds to that, texture, I guess.
Well, that's the thing. That's the thing too. Is like Sean Bevan, who produced this record for us. Like he did Antichrist Superstar. He did
Yes.
Mechanical Animals. He did early Nine Inch Nails stuff. So I guess the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. But if I think that a band like us or a singer like me, someone like Sean Bevan knows exactly what he's looking for in a vocal, and coming from kind of that background, it was a pretty easy fit.
Yeah. When should everybody give us the drop date for the new record?
So I don't have the date for the record yet. The single
Okay.
Fame Whore comes out next Friday. Can't believe it's finally coming out. It's been done for a while. I think that like the amount of patience you have to have when you finish projects before they actually see the light of day makes me crazy. Because there's a lot of people behind the scenes that are kind of steering the ship. But I think 6 weeks after Fame Whore comes out, the next single is going to come out, and there could be one third single before we announce the record. But definitely there will be a release date for the full thing here, probably in the next couple months.
Awesome. We're looking forward to it.
Me too.
We talked about Manson. Obviously, it's a huge influence. I want to ask, what is your favorite Manson album?
Antichrist Superstar.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm in the minority here. I'm tossed between Mechanical Animals and Portrait of an American Family.
Well, those three are those
Yeah.
those are
Those
the
three, yeah.
yeah. I actually didn't like Mechanical Animals nearly as much when it came out as I do now, because I do think it was ahead of its time. And I think that and one of the things I always loved about Manson is he would completely change everything about the way the band sounded and looked in the beginning, like every record.
100%. Yes,
And
I agree.
that's clearly like, and I think if we really dissect the influences, I think we're all influenced by David Bowie, Alice Cooper.
100%. And Mechanical Animals really speaks especially to the Bowie, that 70s
Yeah.
glam. Even it was what was it, Omega, and what was the band called?
Oh goodness, I can't remember.
Oh geez, me neither. But you get my point. It's like Ziggy Stardust and Ziggy and the Spiders from Mars.
Yeah.
It's like, and I believe Billy Corgan was involved in the production on that record from Smashing Pumpkins, but I'm drawing a blank. But you know what? I love that record, but I always do go back to Portrait, like similar to what you said. Like I'm an '80s guy, like I like Skid Row, this and that, then Guns N' Roses, Metallica. But something about when Portrait of an American Family came out,
it was scary.
It was just it was so like nothing I'd ever heard. It was like the first time I heard Sabbath when I was like an 8-year-old.
Right.
I can't explain the feeling. It was something about that record. And I mean, to this day, when I listen to Cake and Sodomy and Lunchbox, I don't know if there are two songs that get me more pumped than those two songs, and have such controversial lyrics.
Yeah.
I mean, unbelievable. And it's so cool when you watch the Lunchbox video. It's the most low budget video, but yet the most awesome video. It's like in a skating rink.
The skating rink, yeah.
And it's probably the least makeup Marilyn ever had on. He looks like a human.
Yeah, that was really before the real transformation.
But like you said, they changed with each record. That was when they were like Marilyn Manson and the Spooky Kids. And by Mechanical Animals, they were pure 70s glam.
Yeah.
In
a fairly short amount of time.
Yeah. So I'm a big Ministry fan too. I'm so fascinated. I know you guys are talking about your band with the evolution, especially on this next record with less of the sampling. But like I always harken back, like it's to me the most shocking transformation of a band has got to be Ministry. Like if you go back to With
To
Sympathy
the
in
80s synth
1983,
pop, yeah, like,
it's like, and I
everything's
love it, but I love it. It's
yeah,
like it's the best Tears for Fears album that Tears for Fears never made.
sure.
The With Sympathy album, and it's like within 5 years, they're doing, you know, Psalm 69, and it blows my mind. And then you look at
Yeah.
Al Jorgensen today. It's like, how did he go from there to there? That fascinates me.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you did though.
I am too, but I like all of it. But yeah, I definitely see the influences. So, it is sports and metal. I
Yeah.
haven't had a chance to talk to Jay since his Eagles lost the Super Bowl.
Oh,
Sorry, Jay. So I have to ask you, Jim, are you a sports fan at all?
yeah.
So tell us a little bit about it. Like, what teams do you like? What's your favorite sport?
So I'm really, really close with basketball, like NBA
Okay.
and NFL.
Okay.
So when you guys asked me to do this, it came at a really good time to be a Phoenix Suns basketball fan because we got a new sheriff in town.
Absolutely. I'm jealous.
You should be.
I don't know how you got Kevin Durant.
Because he didn't want to go anywhere else, and Brooklyn has just been such a mess.
Oh,
And
yeah, disaster.
I mean, now James Harden's looking like he might have been onto something by getting out of there first. I know he's had a couple of quotes recently, like, "Look, you see, I'm not the crazy one." But
Yeah.
that team, that Brooklyn was so dysfunctional, and it really might go down as one of the biggest like busts in history for the NBA because they had so many stars. But that's the other thing is like as we've seen with the ideas specifically in the NBA with super teams, it doesn't always work because you still have to have chemistry, and if you don't play together, then it doesn't matter the individual talent. Like basketball is a team game.
Sure.
And you have to have a deep bench. And I think that like the starters on paper, all the starters for Brooklyn looked really good, but they had absolutely zero bench because they'd spent so much money on the starting five. And then bringing in Ben Simmons, who, I mean, Jason
Jay's
knows
going
all
to get
about
into
that.
that all day.
Yeah. So it's one of those situations where it just didn't work out, and it couldn't have been. And he'd bring in Steve Nash to be the coach for the first time in his entire career, and you're basically on a team that's completely not coachable at all.
Oh, yeah. And Kyrie, one of those stars, didn't even play 80% of the time.
It
What
wasn't
a
like the
disaster.
stat, like the wasn't there like 18 games total that Harden, Durant, and Kyrie played at the same time? It was like something really like less than 20 games.
Something like that. It kind of reminds me of being a Mets fan and having DeGrom and Scherzer in the rotation.
Yeah.
When they start 2 games, they went through the rotation twice. You get my point.
Yeah. So we're waiting for the All-Star break to finish so we can actually see Durant on the court. But we're excited. But there's a lot of pressure on the Suns now. The microscope is definitely there. That magnifying glass after every game, it's going to be big headlines, and we're turning into like a legit NBA sports market. And I say that after we went to the finals 2 years ago, which came out of nowhere. So it's like the next year when we lost last year in the playoffs, we were expecting to get back to the finals, but that first year that we got there against Milwaukee, nobody before the season started would have ever thought there was a chance that was going to happen. But the expectation is championship or bust now. And so people are going to, Phoenix has a target on their back. And considering he hasn't got to play one game yet because he's still hurt, but he's supposed to be coming back right after the All-Star break. I'm very excited to see my team sort of catapult into a new place. It's the biggest trade we've ever had. It's even bigger than Barkley.
It's awesome. I know the microscope is on you, but that's a great feeling. That's a great feeling. It's better than being irrelevant.
True.
And I'm a baseball guy too. Rest in peace, Tim McCarver just passed away the other day. But his death kind of brought Arizona into the spotlight for another reason too, because Tim McCarver had that great call in Game 7 of the 2001 World Series when Luis Gonzalez had the game-winning hit off Mariano Rivera, the walk-off. I don't know if it's been making the rounds, but wow, what a call. Tim McCarver, the 2 outs, bases loaded. I think it was a 3-2 count on Luis Gonzalez. And Tim McCarver says, because the Yankees had brought the infield in, the danger of playing the infield in is because Mariano Rivera throws these low and inside cutters. Left-handed hitters like Gonzalez get a lot of blue hits to the shallow outfield. On the very next pitch, he gets that exact hit. The Diamondbacks walk it off. So just that was a little Arizona tie in there.
Yeah, well, that team won the World Series that year, but then the payroll was so ridiculous because they went all in.
Yep.
And that's the scary part, as you guys know, especially like a Philly market where that's a real sports market. Like you have to win if you have those sort of pieces and luxury taxes and like we just got a new owner for Phoenix right after the Sarver thing ended as a disaster. And the new owner immediately, like he was introduced, and then the next day the Durant trade happened. So that was really exciting to see. All right, so this guy's serious. So it's not like on the Arizona Cardinals side where we're like, growing up as a Cardinals fan, like the Bidwill thing in the beginning when it was Papa Bidwill, he was not looking to win. And then Michael Bidwill came out and kind of changed the culture of the team. And then, we had our loss in the Super Bowl, and we got some things wrong. And I don't know if we've got it right with Kyler Murray right now. I enjoyed, the first couple of years and just seeing some progress, but like something is not in sync. The coaching and there's something was off, and I don't think we're gonna know if it was Cliff Kingsbury or if it was Kyler until we see Kyler play with the new coach. Sure. And he refuses to be under center because he can't throw the ball over the line because it's too short. So
Kyler Murray's been a big disappointment for me.
Eagles fans are laughing at Arizona right now because you just signed our defensive coordinator who had a terrible game in the Super Bowl. So we're actually laughing at Arizona for taking him off our hands.
I don't know if that's fair, Jay.
Yeah, he had a terrible game, and he still got them to the Super Bowl. I mean, I know that like as a Philly guy, you probably thought there was no way that Philadelphia was going to lose that game, but like Mahomes is a proven winner, and these guys who have had experience, they know how to win.
Yeah, Jay, that's a bad take. I'm sorry. You guys had 140 sacks.
I don't necessarily. I'm just saying Philly fans in general.
We know how that goes.
Yeah,
hey,
so
I'm sorry. What's that, Jim?
We're gonna have to figure it out this year with the Cardinals and see what happens. But my expectations, I have found over time that if you don't expect anything from your teams, they do well, and if you expect them to go and win, they don't. So.
Very true.
We'll see what happens.
I've seen that way too much with my teams. I'm a Mets and Dolphins fan. My NFL team's Miami Dolphins.
Okay.
Yeah, so I've been through a lot. I have a commenter here. We're back to the music a little bit. Jim, what is your go-to song that you have to play at each show?
I guess it would probably be Currently In Violence We Trust.
Okay.
But we're playing in Vegas tomorrow for the first time in quite a while. And we're going to play a bunch of songs for the very first time. So I have a feeling that In Violence We Trust will probably always be in the set. But as far as like the newer material, like I feel like there's some new staples in there that will kind of make their way into the set. And when people start to learn those songs, I think it might maybe put In Violence We Trust, take it out of being like the one. And it'll just be part of the set. But there's some stuff in there that I think people are going to be really excited to hear for the first time.
That's awesome.
I think is pretty cool about your records. Like, so Farewell to Humanity is it's the first single on the first album.
It was also the very first song that we ever worked on.
Yeah. And then you did the opposite though with Generation of Failure. It's the last track on the second album. And that's the middle track. So I don't know if that was just like not a coincidence or if you guys actually did that, like, for a reason.
I think that the track listing for Generation of Failure, I think it was probably as simple of a conversation as Andy and I just him sending me what he thought the order should be. And I probably was like, sounds good.
Yeah,
Like,
sometimes it's that simple, right?
yeah, I mean, really, like there's certain things when you're working with other people or collaborating, or whether it's the band or music videos or not as much photo stuff, 'cause that's more of like you doing most of the stuff by yourself and things of that nature for the most part. But when you're working with other people, you kind of pick and choose your battles or whatever, or like there's certain things like that don't mean as much to me as might mean to someone like Andy. So I'm like, if you like that track order, I'm cool with it. Unless you've got some, you know, something out there in left field that I'm like, no, we should switch this. But with that, I think that he came up with that track listing, and I kind of rolled with it.
Cool. Now, obviously, you're talking about there's going to be new songs in the set list. Leads to my
Yep.
next question. Are you guys touring nationally?
So the singles have to come out first because
Sure.
it's the world of music is really weird right now, especially for like a rock or a metal band. Like you have to have stuff that people are super engaged with online before anyone's going to give you, you know, everything that you want, or however you want to frame it. Like they want to see people's reactions. And so far, with Fame Whore not even being out yet, and seeing all the people who've pre-saved it, and even doing press before the song has come out, and sort of turning a bunch of people onto the band that didn't know about it before. Because again, like when we first started the band, like Spotify and Apple Music were not the end all be all
Yeah.
in music, and now that is the only thing that people are interested in, is looking at metrics, which it has nothing to do with art. So that's the hard part.
And that is so true. And that's why it's kind of become the preferred way to release music, is to release a track at a time. You know,
People don't have a very long
long
attention
attention
span.
span.
So what you're doing is you're basically building a record.
Yeah,
Some
that's
bands
it.
never put out full records at all anymore.
Yeah, that is it.
The
Jay and I
only
were talking about it earlier today. That is it.
And
No,
the ones that do it are like the established bands, like the legacy acts, or people
sure.
who,
Yep.
you know, Metallica's never going to put out a single, and that's going to be it.
But
Most
you know
likely.
what? Even Metallica has gone to that format. Granted, you're right. They're going to put the record out, but
Yeah.
they've gone to that same format where, you know, the first single drops 6 months before the album release, and then a
Yep.
month later another one, and each one has a video.
Yep.
It's just a different world, and that saddens me. That's one thing that really saddens me, because you know the three of us, I'm assuming all of us, grew up in that generation where what we did was we'd buy an album at the record store, and it wasn't just about a particular song. It was about the whole experience, from the album cover to the inside artwork to the liner notes, and then reading the lyrics to each song and listening to the
Yep.
whole album from front to back. It was like going to the movies, right? You sat by your record player or your CD player, whatever it might have been, and you indulged yourself into a record, you know. And I did that even into the 90s. I mean, Mechanical Animals, again, that record comes to mind as one of the records I did that with, because it was like a journey, like it was a concept album. You know, that's lost in today's music, and I find that to be a real shame. What are your thoughts on that?
So I was actually thinking about this a couple days ago, because again, like we're still somewhat adapting to what's going on now. So when you were kids, or like when I was a kid, going to a concert, for example, like you didn't know what the set list was going to be. You didn't have YouTube to go see like what the production looked like. And it was basically like a meeting place for a bunch of like-minded people
Yep.
who cared about whatever band it was that much, that they wanted to be around other people that cared as much as they do.
Nailed
Now,
it. Yep.
now you don't have to go to the show to see it, essentially. You don't have to buy the record. If you have a streaming service, you're paying like $10 a month, and it's basically on demand anytime you want it. And it's basically taken a lot of the experience out of the music process, and the fan experience is 100% different than it was when we were buying. So it's just, everything's really accessible. Whether it's, music, film, art, we're surrounded by it. So it's very oversaturated. So you have to really find people who really love something that are still willing to, go to shows. Or vinyl's huge again, which is great. Other than the fact that it takes 8 months to get back if you put an order in, like as a band, like the plants are so backed up.
Yeah.
That part of it's really frustrating. But there are people, and I buy vinyl, but I will typically buy 2 copies of something because I want to keep one sealed and I'll have the other one I'll play. But yeah, I just it's just a different world. And being in the photo side of things and in the music video side of things, like those are different elements that are part of that record or that experience or the presentation that the fans are getting. Being a part of those other artists' stories is really cool too, because essentially so much of what I loved about, whether it was going to the grocery store to pick up the magazine, or MTV was basically my babysitter. I would sit there for hours and just watch the same videos
Another
over and over again.
nailed it. Yep.
And so now I'm doing those things for other artists and playing music at the same time. So I think that one of you asked, to answer your question, they're all very important to me in a different way. If I just wanted to do one, it would clearly just be in a band. I would rather have that experience. But my job is the second best thing I could ever hope to do. So being able to do all of them at the same time is something I'm learning now how to juggle, like in real time. Like I'm in Seattle. I've been here for 4 days working on a video, and I have to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and go to the airport, have one rehearsal the day of the show, and then play tomorrow night, and then go back home to start another project with another band.
That's amazing. And we've come full circle. Yeah, I asked you that kind of in the opening, and wow, what a way to like maybe end the show. I mean, you just came full circle with it.
Yeah.
And you've done magazine covers, Kerrang.
Yeah.
You're living the dream, man. and I'm excited for you. And I'm really pumped for the new record. I know Jay is. Listen, I mean, I don't know what else to say. We're so glad you joined us. You have anything to add, Jay?
No, like I said, I'm excited about the new track. I'm assuming it'll be heavy because that's your guys.
It's heavy.
So
yeah, we're super
heavy,
pumped, man.
Groove. You'll be able to remember it. There's a lot of fame whores in the world, so
this is true.
This one's for them.
Yeah, awesome.
Wait till you see the video. Wait till you see the video. It's
cannot wait. So again, what was the date on that? The drop for the new single?
Next Friday.
Awesome.
Yep.
So Fame Whore. Check it out, guys. There is no us. Jim, I know we want to thank you for coming on the show. Everybody, this is Jim Louvau. Jim, tell the audience where they can find you.
Socials, like I actually have a website, just louvau.com, louvau.com. Instagram, There Is No Us Band, Jim Louvau. I'm not hard to find.
Awesome. So listen, check him out. Check out There Is No Us, new album coming out. Thank you for joining us, Jim. We had a great time. We had a blast.
Awesome.
We're super excited for the new record. And as always, guys, this is Aaron Savage and Jason Voorhees signing off. Rock on.
Go Suns.
Peace out.
Later, boys.
Later, guy. Thanks, Jim.
Yep.